The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
TV party tonight! TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated here
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my tickets!
Everybody loves Hippo Toad.
Scary dog!
Pearson and Blurnsball.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast TV party tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, I am joined by Combat Jack as we continue our journey from the corner to the deuce. How you doing, Combat Jack?
Oh my goodness, Mark Radulich, it is good to be here. Good to be here. Have you ever heard of a podcast, Jack?
I've heard of a podcast.
Wrong
jackass.
website.
I've heard of a podcast jackass. That's usually me.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. Man, we are continuing to go down the road of David Simon.
Well,
And
you know,
this-
Jesse, we've spent 5 months in that city of Baltimore, the chocolate city, if you were, that isn't New Orleans. And now we've gotten in a Humvee. We've driven it to the airport. We took that airport and we've landed in Baghdad. And we met Bob. Baghdad Bob is his name. And so we find ourselves as we continue our journey from the corner to the deuce, talking about Generation Kill, baby. What a stark contrast from Homicide to the corner to the wire. First of all, I didn't think David Simon knew any white people. Like, because my God, what a white cast after dealing with 5 seasons of The Wire and 1/2 a season of The Corner and 3 seasons of Homicide, baby. But Generation Kill is an American 7-part television miniseries produced by HBO that aired from July 13th to August 24th, 2008. It is based on Evan Wright's 2004 book about his experience as an embedded reporter with the U.S. Marine Corps 1st Reconnaissance Battalion during the 2003 invasion of Iraq. That was the sequel to the Gulf War, in case anyone's keeping score. It was so nice they did it twice. It was adapted for television by David Simon, the aforementioned David Simon, the great works that we're examining of his. Ed Burns, his writing partner, and Evan Wright. The miniseries was directed by Susanna White and Simon Cellan Jones and produced by Andrea Calderwood. The ensemble cast includes Alexander Skarsgård from The Northman as Sergeant Brad Iceman from Top Gun, apparently. Colbert, James Ransone, who you might remember as Ziggy from season 2 of The Wire. Jesse, give me that line again. Give it to me, baby.
Ziggy, put your dick away.
He doesn't even pull it out on this show. I was very, very disappointed. We didn't get to see James Ransone's ginormous horsecock. And Corporal Josh Ray Person and Lee Tergesen, who got out of prison. He got out of Oz, Jesse. He got out of Oz and he plays Rolling Stone reporter Evan Wright. But we are not alone, ladies and gentlemen. We have been chronicling the great works of David Simon for quite a number of months now. And it's just been me and Jesse, sitting close, holding hands, discussing the great many things that David Simon has brought into this world. And then Andrew Graham pipes up and says, "What about me, boss?" He wanted to get in on the action. He turned Jesse and I's little one-on-one action into a threesome. And so here he is, ladies and gentlemen, from the what? There's 3 of us. It's a threesome. I don't understand.
Welcome to the show, Andrew. This is what it's going to be like. So just be ready.
I had a bit set up for this, by the way, because Mark, I was going to ask you, Mark, am I the first guest to be on this podcast series?
You are Andrew Graham of the Screaming Boy podcast from our Canadian North office. Welcome aboard. Yes, you
Excellent.
are the first.
I just used a podcast. That's pretty fucking ninja. I'd also like to say to everyone that this is the best goddamn David Simon podcast in the entire internet, as long as you keep it away from your uglier daughters and your smaller livestock. And yes, this show is eminently quotable, and I've watched it way too many fucking times.
Clearly, I'm gonna need you to police your mustache. That's all I'm asking you for. Don't come on my podcast and not adhere to the grooming standards, sir. The grooming standards.
The grooming standards.
So Andrew Graham of the Screamy Boy podcast, you decided a little ways back that when we got to Generation Kill, you wanted to be a part of this. I know that when you, as you Canadians apparently say, when you went to university, you apparently opened a book or two having to deal with a war or two. So why don't you tell us in the audience a little bit about your knowledgeable experience and what made you decide to talk about this show in particular, and why not The Wire? Why not The Corner? Why are you like racist against Baltimore? Why did you only have to come on Generation Kill and then fuck off after this? Like, we can't bring you back to discuss porn on the Deuce? All right, I'll shut up now.
So, complete honesty is because I'm too cheap to get the extra streaming service. I need to watch the rest of those shows. But I mean, I am interested in this stuff. I mean, I am kind of one of the resident, fight choreographers, last historians on this entire on this network. So that's kind of my role. I did do quite a bit.
I was like groveling Marvel apologist.
I'm pretty proud of that. I wouldn't say I'm groveling. Anyway,
okay, sorry.
We'll talk about blaming Iron Man and Star-Lord later. But anyway, any case. So went to University of Calgary, got my bachelor's of history from there. I didn't quite get enough credits to get a specialization in military history, but I did quite a bit of that throughout there. I also at the time kind of had a few friends who were in the Canadian military themselves. Best man at my wedding, still an officer in the forces and things like that. And that's always been kind of a period of interest. Obviously, when I was going to university, kind of 2000, I guess it would have been about 2003 to 2007. This was obviously a pretty active period. This is when this war took place. We had the wars in Afghanistan going on. So I, for a time, actually considered a career in the military and decided not to. And I've just always been kind of engaged with this aspect of history and this aspect of current affairs and things like that. And after the rep that Band of Brothers built up with HBO military related TV shows came along and they said, hey, we're doing one about the Iraq invasion. I'm like, awesome. Let's watch that.
So 2001, I'm working for a foster care agency in Brooklyn when the World Trade Center was bombed. And 2003, when we launched the invasion into Iraq, I was actually partying with my friends in New Orleans, and nothing stops a party in New Orleans like a good bombing of Iraq. I was reading a lot of nonfiction books, current affairs books at the time, a lot of history. I was pretty well, for a layman, pretty well steeped in what was going on politically, culturally at the time. The invasion of Afghanistan was essentially, this is where we think bin Laden is. We're pretty sure he's responsible for 9/11. So we, with the help of the CIA and some ground forces on the ground in Afghanistan, we launched the invasion there. And Don Rumsfeld, according to the Bob Woodward books, said at the time, there's no good targets in Afghanistan. And he pouted and threw himself on the floor. Ask Bob Woodward. He says that's what happened. But and he's like, there's no good targets in Afghanistan. Let's invade Iraq instead. Which I don't know, if you're asking me, I think it's a great reason to invade a country. Better targets. So real quick, 2003, where were you in the world when George Bush decides, you know what? I believe the CIA and the FBI and Don Rumsfeld and what's his nuts?
Anonymous guy.
Yeah, that Saddam has weapons of mass destruction and he's already used them on his people once. It's entirely possible they'll either end up in the hands of Al Qaeda or some other terrorist group, or he'll use them themselves. That was the argument at the time. So let's go in there and go get them. Where are you in 2003 when this all happens, Andrew?
So I was at university at the time. I think it was on my second. No, actually, it would have been my first year. And I actually clearly remember the first day of the invasion, basically that syncs up with the first episode. I actually remember them wheeling in extra TVs and having the kind of the volumes turned up and McEwen Hall, which was kind of the big student center there. And it's got kind of a big foyer. So they had a bunch of TVs set up doing all the coverage of basically the start of the invasion.
I remember at the time having lived through that. So 2003, like I said, I'm in grad school. I'm at home, but I'm spending a lot of time in New York City. I'm following what's happening pretty closely. Having been that close to 9/11 when it happened, I got really invested in what was going on in the world. And I remember this was like the fastest takedown of a country in like the history of warfare. Like we went in on whatever day it was, and within like what, 2-3 months, if that,
3 weeks.
It was it was a really ridiculously short period of time. In 3 weeks, we were in Baghdad knocking the Saddam statue over and claiming victory. And then, shortly thereafter, Bush does the mission accomplished thing, and then the real war started. But the actual claiming of the country was like the shortest in history. What about you, Jesse? Any of this resonate with you? Were you paying attention at the time? Did you put down your comic books long enough to follow?
It's funny because I could tell you probably what I was reading at the time. Which was
I knew it.
Plenty of comics. But it's interesting, that period of time in March of 2003, I'm actually in the process of moving like away from my hometown. So I wasn't paying attention to anything that was going on in the world. I don't recall this happen. Either I didn't have the TV hooked up or I wasn't watching TV at the time. So I was probably, if I caught anything on it, it was in passing over the radio or something like that. So is this interesting? This is a blank spot. I was in, about 3 hours south from where I'm living right now, all by myself. I should say it was me and my wife. This was kind of our journey out as a couple into the real world. Are we going to make it? And so I wasn't paying attention to shit. I had no idea, like I knew what was going on, but it wasn't like I was watching and keeping up with it on the news. You guys definitely sound like you knew what the current events were at that point in time. But no, I'm worried about fixing the arcade machines at my arcade that I'm managing, and that is it. But I'm always down for a good war story. So this is good stuff.
Go ahead, Andrew.
So I was going to say, I do have one kind of somewhat funny anecdote, not about this war, but about the first Gulf War. A few years after this happened, I was at a friend's 25th birthday party, and this would have been about 2008. And all of us would have been around. We're all about the same age, so I would have been about around 7 or 8 when first Gulf War happened. And the question came up at the table. Okay,
hang on.
Which one of you has an early defining memory?
I was in high school.
Okay, sorry.
I'm so old. Please continue.
I was about to say the conversation went to like, defining moments of the generation. It's like, okay, who around the table has a defining memory of seeing tracers over Baghdad on the TV when things were going down in 1991? And we're all like, yep.
Yes, absolutely. That is I think credited as like when we decided to go to like 24-hour news networks. That was one of the things that really prompted that as a thing, and now it's just really commonplace. I will say,
I'm reminded of like the Dennis Leary bit where he was like, we got to watch the war on TV for the first time, and he was just like, when the war was over, it ended too quickly. He was like, where else? It's like I'm hard as a rock eating a cheeseburger watching the war on TV. I didn't want it to end. It was the best show on TV at the time. Like, where are we going to invade next? Vietnam. Surprise the fuck out of those people.
And it's kind of interesting even getting into that a little bit. I mean, this series kind of gets into a kind of an aspect of that where 91 you had the start of the 24-hour news cycle and things like that. And this gets into your embeds, your embedded reporters. So reporters
they had embeds in Vietnam too.
I don't know if it's quite the same way it's turned into now, where it's like it is really. There were still a lot of kind of roaming war reporters, but I think the whole concept of every publication now has their embed.
Right. Yeah, there were news outlets that they may not have been embedded to where like you are right there living and breathing and working right next to the Marines. You're with them. You're part of the group. But there were definitely war reporters on the ground in Vietnam. There have been war reporters on the ground in almost any war, or you had war correspondents that were enlisted people that were sending messages back, sending information back. So I mean, there has been for the last 100 years some sort of journalism on the ground at in the war. The thing about I think that I remember reading, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, is the concerted effort to not lose the people. They, not lose the American people with the Iraq War. And I think that was like the point of the embeds from like Rolling Stone or whatever it was. If you're here with us and we're opening up to you and we're letting you inside and we're telling you why we're doing the things that we're doing. So Rush Limbaugh, people like, what? Hang on. Rush Limbaugh apparently was one of the people who went to Iraq at one point. And a lot of people on both sides of the political aisle were sent to Iraq for entertainment purposes, to at the very least address the troops. So like Henry Rollins told a story about like, he got sent over there as part of like the USO. And then they were like, okay, so you're on now, go on stage, go do something. He was like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? I'm Henry Rollins. I don't have a band. Like I'm just me. They're like, I don't know, juggle, motherfucker. Do something. Like go entertain them. Rush Limbaugh, kind of the same thing. He went there to entertain the troops in some way, shape, or form. But while you're there as part of the USO, you go and tour. You go out with the troops. They show you stuff. And Rush Limbaugh was telling this anecdote about how, like, he's in the Humvee with some of the soldiers, and they're driving like maniacs. They're like doing sharp turns and just like really driving recklessly. And Rush Limbaugh's like, is this really necessary? And they're like, yeah, this is how we show these people who's boss.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of that. And I relate that to the idea of the military has, and this leads right into our discussion of Generation Kill. The military has a perspective. We have a job to do. The job is not easy. The job involves killing people. It's not something the average person is going to ever really truly understand deep down in their soul. How it's done, why it's done, and to what end this has to be done. And we can sit here and internally debate the merits of any given war and the objectives to it and whatever else. And I was being really tongue-in-cheek with the weapons of mass destruction deal, as everyone was at one point or another. But the reality is that the military has its own perspective on how things should be done. And they want their say. And they want to be able to tell the Evan Wrights of the world, the embedded reporters, like, hey, here's our side of the story. And people can do with that what they will. They can either take it or leave it. But at least as opposed to like the way Vietnam was done, you're not just getting like the CBS perspective and the military is like, what the fuck? That's not how, like, we're not getting an opportunity to defend ourselves here. You're just reporting what it is you think you should be reporting. Which I think is probably the great strength of the series, is that there's this, because while a lot of it is the very picayune and meticulous sort of fine point descriptions of what's going on and why things are done the way they're done in military operations, you also have the soldiers talking directly and somewhat condescendingly to Lee Tergesen, who's playing Evan Wright, about, you people will never understand what it is to be a warrior and what warriors have to do. And maybe you should think about that before you make a judgment, which is probably my favorite aspect of this show.
Yeah. And I think I'll even take that a step further, Mark, because in a lot of ways, I mean, the military is not a monolith, and this unit, and they don't do a good job of setting this up, but this unit is also unique. Like, 1st Marine Recon is like a fairly elite unit within the Marine Corps. Like, it is a very small, 99% of the guys you see in this show, with a few exceptions, went through kind of a selection process, and they went through all the various kind of additional trade schools, whether they be recon snipers or everything like that. And they're kind of, and maybe I'll just set this up now, the way they're seen operating during this war and everything like that, it's very different from what they're used to doing. This is more along the lines of them. Normally how they would operate is they're operating in kind of groups of, we call them sections, Americans call them squads, but groups of about 8 men. And they're fairly kind of detached units. They get to go up, and really what they specialize in is either reconnaissance, going up, observing, gathering data, things like that, or they do what's called direct action, which is, they're specifically setting specific ambushes to get specific guys. I think I did a little extra research on this. They're also good at kind of boarding searches and clearing ships and things like that. So this is very much a specialized unit, and they were operating in a way in this war that was very different from what they have. But again, I was just watching the first episode and the scene where they're all wearing the black watch caps, and that's something that they see as a unique role for them.
Mm-hmm.
And even their motto is swift, silent, deadly. So not all those things always being inclusive.
Okay. So I know you had like a laundry list of technical stuff that you wanted to get into, Andrew. I want to give you that opportunity before we get into the craft elements.
Honestly, I think I'll probably just start with kind of providing a little bit of that background in terms of the unit, kind of how it was. There's other bits that they don't mention. I have had a chance to read the original book that, brings in a lot more information. So, like I said, this is the first time in a long time they've been operating in a unit this large. They weren't normally driving the Humvees that they were. Even the CO referred to as Godfather because of lung cancer and luck.
Right.
He was actually I guess prior to this command, he wasn't actually a combat commander, but the book only refers to a ceremonial unit. So he was relatively new to combat himself.
Right. Boy, does it show in some of the decision making that is at least portrayed in the show.
And maybe one thing sorry, never mind. Sorry, just something came up on the screen. I had to laugh at it. And something that also is brought up a little bit here is there's a little bit of conflict in the background going on. They're talking about chaos quite a bit, which is the name, the call sign for General James Mattis, who went on to be Trump's first defense secretary. And the embrace of something called maneuver warfare. And the whole idea of maneuver warfare, and Mark, I had to think of the perfect analogy to explain this. It's maneuver warfare is the whole concept of being like Jersey Joe Walcott and moving in such a way and moving so much and so often that you're disrupting the other guy's thought patterns, and you're basically being able to blow right through them without necessarily, having to do some of the older levels of
it makes my heart sing that you can go back to Pat and I's History of Boxing podcast and reference it in 2-3 years ago we were doing that, and like
I love that series.
Still remembered enough to be like to bring it forward and like use it as a metaphor for what we're talking about now. And I heart you, Andrew.
Thank you very much. But anyway, I mean it's very aggressive. It's very on the fly.
Yeah,
it's very unconventional in a lot of ways. And the Marine Corps is kind of interesting because, I mean, they may even make jokes in the series. The Marine Corps is America's little pit bull. They beat us, mistreat us, and let us out to invade a country every so often. The Marine Corps is also possibly one of the more intellectual elements of the U.S. Armed Forces, where they're very involved in the thinking and the prosecution of warfare. I mean, again, talking about a guy like Mattis. Mattis is kind of one of this entire generation of U.S. scholar generals who he's a bachelor. Apparently, every time he moves, he brings 9,000 books with him. Like a very, very smart guy and a very intellectual guy. So it's kind of there's a lot of push and pull in this series, and I think they do a good job of kind of illustrating that.
All right, let's get into the craft elements of these shows and actually give Jesse a chance to weigh in here. I want to tackle some of the issues I have with this show first, and then we can talk the rest of the hour about the positives, because there's more positive than there are negatives. But I was you brought up Band of Brothers. I don't remember if I discussed it at the time, but I do remember thinking sometimes Band of Brothers was a little hard to follow. This is even worse in that respect, because it's 7 episodes, and I think the first 5, it's a lot of the same guys. Now look, I'm not sitting here thinking like, why are they all wearing the same costume? Like, that's not what this is. Can we?
Why the hell are they wearing forest green mop suits in a desert?
Yeah, well, that's a whole other thing. But I understand you're doing a show about a military invasion. You want accuracy. People are gonna wear fatigues. They're gonna have helmets on. You know what happens when everyone wears the same thing in a helmet, and most of them are white? They all kind of look the same. So half the time, I don't even know who's talking. They're in the desert. And again, you can't be like, I couldn't shoot this in a nicer location. No, it's the fucking desert. It's Iraq. It has to be where it is. The problem is the first couple of episodes, between a lot of actors looking alike, they're all dressed the same, and they're all in the same location for the length and breadth of the first few episodes. it got a little hard to follow at times. Jesse, I'll let you weigh in on this in just a second, but maybe it's because I was half watching and half doing other stuff, or I remember thinking the first episode there was a lot. It was very dense. So you're dealing with a lot of same over and over and over again. Plus, you're dealing in almost an alien language. They're using jargon and they give no fucks if you can follow along, which is great.
Yeah.
For those of you listening to this on audio, I'm currently holding up the basic training book that came with the DVD set of
Right.
Generation Kill, and it has a 16-page glossary in it.
Yeah, and books are for burning, and I shouldn't have to do homework to follow your show. However, I do enjoy the accuracy of it. So, like, it's laden with jargon. It all looks the same, and it was just difficult to follow up until the very end of the show. There were certain elements of it that despite it being hard to follow, were so great that it didn't matter anymore. But I will say that's one of the great frustrations of this is not enough, Jesse, differentiation from scene to scene to always keep my interest. What did you think?
Okay. Well, me personally, I didn't have much of a problem following what was going on. I will agree with you, though. There are a lot of characters, and yeah, I mean, you have to try your best to remember the names with the faces, but the good thing is that the personalities really make you remember who Captain America is, who Encino Man is. You're going to remember who these people are. But I could probably say that my wife is more in your boat there, Mark, because she watched this with me. About half of it. The other half, I think she nodded off and slept because she probably was she got frustrated at sometimes trying to figure out. She didn't make it very evident, but she wasn't as interested. And shows like that get confusing. It's hard for her to even stay interested and stay awake. But myself, yeah, I didn't have much of a problem with that. I think it was the personalities that helped me out. And you stick with mostly the same four guys. You're sticking with Ray, you're sticking with Iceman, you're sticking with the reporter, and Whopper Jr., as he comes to be known. But it's Trombley, yeah. You get to stick with these guys through most of it, and then you have to deal with all the outside elements. But yeah, I mean, as far as enjoying what was going on and staying up on it, yeah, I didn't have much of a problem.
What about you, Andrew? Any issue? Well, actually, before I go to you, Andrew, were there any issues that you did have with the show, Jesse, or did you think it was pretty much perfect?
I mean, it was okay. I didn't really have. No, this wasn't something. You're right. It's such a stark contrast to what we had gotten before with Homicide and The Wire. You could tell this is clearly based on somebody's book, that we're going to a whole different setting here, and my impression was we were going to focus on the failures of war. That was my impression anyway, because there seemed to be an awful lot of failure that happened in this amongst just trying to get supplies, and the chaos that ensued. And I thought it done that. It did that.
The acronym, I think it's like snafu, situation normal, all fucked up, that they use in the military all the time. So I was thinking about I'm going to get to you in a second, Andrew, but I was thinking about the through line. What connects Homicide to the Corner, to The Wire, to Generation Kill, and everything else that we're going to talk about after, and that is attention to detail. The singular David Simon touch to everything is that no fucks given. That whether or not you are drawn into the minutia of any world David Simon wants to take you to. So whether it's the homicide unit in the Baltimore Police Department, or the Corner, or a generational drug corner and family mired in trauma and abuse and substance abuse, to everything we discussed on The Wire, to this, there's a level of meticulous detail that David Simon puts in every one of his shows, and jargon and language and aesthetic that I think is really unmatched by any one person putting out content in Hollywood. I think David Simon stands far and away one of the best out there. when it comes to truly introducing you to an alien world with crisp, vivid detail. I want to go over to you, Andrew. A lot's been said between Jesse and I with some of the issues here. If you have, agreement or disagreement, but also what issues, if any, did you have with the show?
I think I'll probably, I had an easier time following it, but I think the show definitely fails sometimes when it breaks away from the main unit of guys, which are all in Bravo Company. They all go by the call sign Hitman. And when they jump to some of the other units, I think that as much as there are some great bits there, including probably one of the funniest parts ever in the entire show, when they're basically trying to figure out what the hell Misha's saying to one of the other guys, and they're I couldn't. You put a gun to my head. I could not tell you what the names of those guys were.
All right.
So it does definitely have a trouble when it gets a little too ensemble and you're breaking away a little bit too much from the main cast. But and I would say, again, I've researched the shit out of this. I have a map, and they actually have all the map things on the DVDs. So this is from, the times of when DVD features were a thing, because it's not all on streaming, but it's like, I can definitely see someone going into this and saying, what the fuck is going on? Because there's no date chirons, there's nothing. You're just going with it. And even this thing takes place over a fairly compressed amount of time. I think the whole elapsed time on the series is 3 weeks. So I can definitely see some of those issues coming through.
All right, so some positive things about the show. One, it's wonderfully acted. James Ransone, I don't know if he was. I gotta look and see if anyone was nominated for anything. But Alexander Skarsgård and Jane Ransone. First of all, what sexual chemistry between those two? They lit up the screen, man. Anytime they're in the Humvee, woo! such manly action. No, they're great. And James, I'll tell you what, some of the personalities in this sort of to blend together for me. And you've seen one jarhead, you've seen them all, but a handful of guys stuck out. Alexander Skarsgård, obviously being the lead in this, he stuck out. And James Ransone is amazing in this.
Yep. And Starcher could be related to Brad Colbert. I think I sent that around, and it's the degree of similarities, both physically and then also in kind of some of his delivery and things like that, and his general kind of presence are pretty similar. If you've ever seen any videos of the actual Brad Colbert,
I think I enjoyed him more, Jesse, in this than I did as Ziggy in The Wire. And that just might be because I really hated the Ziggy character. He's such a douchebag.
He was, too.
But here, to have, the one soldier who's too smart to be soldiering, and he's happy enough to be there. He knows his job. He obviously takes pride in what he's doing, but he's also smarter than the average soldier. And he has a perspective. And sometimes I think James Ransone might be speaking for the audience. And some of these situations where he's sort of sarcastically reflecting on the lack of supplies, the changes in orders, the stupid orders that are given. And he's sort of the Greek chorus to the whole thing. And he plays so well off of Alexander Skarsgård. And I don't want to get into the music yet because that's its own topic. But the give and take and the rapport that they have related to singing in the Humvee was some of the best stuff, Jesse, of the show.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. There was a lot of fun just listening to Ray go off on his perspective of war. And, what was it called? Hold on, I have it here. Give me just a second. It is called Pussy Warfare. Pussy Infrastructure, if I remember correctly.
Take the Republican Guard, calm their asses in Vegas for a weekend, no war.
Perfect. It's perfect. But yeah, listen, he was nonstop. He was on the ripped fuel, and he would just continue to go and go and go and go and go, but entertaining nonetheless. I'll tell you, one of my favorite actors in this is the guy who played Captain America. and because Captain America, we all hate him, and you're supposed to because this guy is an idiot. But he definitely made me think that this guy is insane. He is clearly bothered by he's either bothered by the horrors of war this much, or he is enjoying it this much. You didn't know. Like, I couldn't figure out if he was. At one point, he's burying the guns that he was using because he's so worried about what was going on. So
I had
that's
flashbacks to either, and I can't remember if it's Full Metal Jacket or Platoon, where you have the one Gatling gun or machine gunner in the helicopter, and he's just shooting civilians.
Yeah, that was Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket, yeah.
Yep.
And like, and I think like, that's right. Matthew Modine and the other guy are like reporters, and like they are enlisted reporters, and they're in that chopper with him, and he's like, only good Gook's a dead Gook, and he's just laughing as he's shooting fucking farmers, and I think one of them like vomits in the helicopter. Like I was having moments like that.
That was the guy they originally had cast to play Gunnery Sergeant Hertman.
Oh really?
Oh really?
At the beginning.
Huh.
What about you, Andrew?
Sorry, just in terms of
what we've been discussing, and like I said, like some of the best stuff here is the performances. There's really good chemistry between some of these actors. I really liked, and I'll add this, and then you can, and I'll flip it back to you. I can't remember the character or the actor, but he's the one. He stands out to me because the last couple episodes I saw, his bits were the most standout. Like some of the most standout dialogue in this, where he's like, so you look like a Mexican, you talk like a black guy, but you hang around all white people, and he's just like, yeah, if I hang around all Mexicans, I feel like we walk into a place that we're gonna hold the place
Garza
up.
Was great. So I mean, it's kind of interesting. Again, I've had a chance to get into some of the biographies around these guys.
He has this really sweet moment though with Lee Tergesen. It's great where he's just he's like, I have poetry. Would you like to read it? And it's that stuff. It's you're there as a reporter to see the humanization of a very inhuman thing, and you have to remember that these are still people. And my God, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but I got to get this out. That mailroom scene or mail call scene, where like one guy's got a letter from an attorney from his wife divorcing him, and like everyone's just like, we've been in the shit. We're invading a country. We're doing our job. We're standing up for America, and everyone in their lives is falling apart. Like, that's tragic.
That was the exact point where I realized that the mustache hair grooming standard had a reason. It was there for a reason. That guy's purpose was to keep them focused on hating one thing at a time and keep their morale up. But yeah, man, it is that is so rough to watch these people have to deal with, and they're so far away and they can't do anything about it. That's one of the horrors of war, is that you're out in a strange land and you're so far away from what you know, and you get this word from back home that all this shit is falling apart because
nobody appreciates what you're doing.
Exactly.
Nobody is loyal. So
nobody gets it.
And I'm going to keep myself from projecting too much here, but there's no loyalty, no appreciation for loyalty, no appreciation for duty, nothing. It's just, I signed up, I went to war, I did my duty, and I came home, and no one gave a shit. I mean, it's not quite spitting on you if you get home from Vietnam, but it might as well be. All right. We've now cut Andrew off 106 times. Go ahead.
Okay. So where am I going to start on this one? So I think the entire cast chemistry, the way the characters are developed and everything like that are all fantastic. Again, I think this show doesn't work if you don't have great chemistry among the 3 or 4 primaries in the main truck. Yeah. And, keeping with them was always really, really good and really funny. James Ransone's so good. And apparently, again, not too far off how Ray Person actually is. Because apparently, again, smart as a whip. And I like the way they kind of, and I watched it again, and it's like, you watch this character, and 90% of the time he's out there, he's talking shit. It's like, this guy's absolutely nuts. But then in some of the other scenes, it's like he's going into a detailed description of how cryptography works with Colbert. And it's like, this is a guy who actually really knows his shit. He's very, very capable, but he's also just...
Yeah. Meanwhile, there's a scene of him jerking off. And
he had to get his combat jack in, man.
Yeah, he's combat jacking, as Jesse likes to talk about.
I mean, Colbert's kind of an interesting character. Again, the similarities between his portrayal and the videos I've seen of him are pretty remarkable, actually. And again, he was regarded as a, one of those guys you want to have with you, because he's like, he keeps his shit together, stuff like that. But you also see, he's got a good relationship with the guys in the truck. Him and Person have, great chemistry together. He even knows how to build a rapport with, the reporter and stuff like that. I always enjoyed having Garza around, just because he was always funny for that sort of stuff. And Garza's kind of an interesting gentleman unto himself, because he was not a recon Marine. Basically, they needed another team lead, and Colbert apparently knew him from somewhere else in the Marines, and actually said, "You've got to come in here, and I need you to help me out on this, because I need a guy I can trust." And so, I think it's second to last episode, he comes up to him when they think they're all going home, and he says, "You built a good rep in the recon community over this." That was a really heartfelt and really true kind of commendation of his friend. And I think again, it lives and dies on the relationships between all the characters in this show. And I mean, on some level, that's also how you go through these situations, is living and dying on the relationships with the people you have around you.
Right.
We cannot, first of all, real quick, accolades. I'll stick with, because fucking Robert always gets into me about, like, I read stuff from to fucking the Film Society of Venezuela. Like, just stick with the main ones. So it was nominated for Primetime Emmys for Outstanding Miniseries, Outstanding Direction, and Outstanding Writing. It was all nominated and won none. The Primetime Creative Arts Emmy, it won for Outstanding Sound.
Yep.
Outstanding Sound Mixing and Outstanding Visual Effects, which will lead into the next bit of our conversation. Television Critics, it was nominated for an Outstanding Achievement in Movies, Miniseries, or Specials. As far as anything that it won a Golden Reel for Best Sound Editing. It won an Artios Award for Outstanding Achievement in Casting and the Gracie Award for Jiu-Jitsu. For Outstanding Directing for Susanna White. But we do have to talk about, when we would be remiss if we didn't, the special effects in this show. When you think about, like, even peak TV, from The Wire to The Shield to The Sopranos to Dexter, even like, Game of Thrones and Rome sort of stand apart for their meticulous set design. But I would not say, like, except for a little bit of Game of Thrones, there was a tremendous amount of special effects going on. Not at least from episode to episode. There might be like one where you have the ice zombies or whatever, but for the most part, it's a lot of talking in really intricate sets. Here, this stands far and away apart from almost anything going on in television in 2008. In terms of being able to show you, I mean, this is the sort of thing where you have to go to the theater, and go see Jarhead or The Hurt Locker or Black Hawk Down to see outstanding special effects and realistic warfare portrayed on screen. They did this on television. And when you think about some of the firefights that are in this show, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of talking and definitely way too much discussion of mustache grooming. But when they finally get to fussing and fighting, I watched the war. It looked like that. It looked like the idea of like crossfire and everything when they're on that bridge. There's a lot going on in this show, and credit where credit is due. I mean, David Simon up to this point just had people talking on a Baltimore street or in a police station. And now he's got to work with his cinematographer and his special effects people to create a realistic combat situation. Bravo. This looks amazing, Andrew.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for the time, it looked really great. And I actually just came across a quick...
I mean, I think for that time, but also for television.
For television, for sure. And I mean, I think, this was... A lot of it was, I think, selective and good use of setting up your shots, doing your cuts back and forth and things like that. And the thing is, I don't think this show was actually put together with this wasn't one of those shows that had like the aid of the U.S. military, because I guess part of what they ended up doing, I think they shot this all in South Africa, but what they ended up having to do was, there's a number of scenes where they have LAVs or Strikers, which are a light armored vehicle, and they're all CG in the show. What ended up happening was they had actually kind of built ones on truck chassis out of wood and painted them originally. And
Hey, real quick, yes, it was shot in Mozambique, Namibia, and South Africa. And by the way, this had not a quite Marvel budget. This was a $56 million show.
Oh, wow.
This was a movie.
Yeah,
It was a 7-hour movie.
I was about to say they got their money's worth out of this one, but anyway, so they put together these Humvees, and then actually one of the Marines from who's actually featured in the show, Eric Coker, he was Captain America's kind of team leader, and he's the one that tells him, you shoot another AK without calling it and I'll fuck you up.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually the military advisor on this, and he was actually in the show for a few scenes. He was the gunnery sergeant for A Company. But he looked at those things. He said, that looks like shit. And they went back and spent like $250,000 replacing them all with CG.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I mean, it looks really good. And I mean, I'd say on some level, I don't even know if it's the visual effects, but it's like the set dressing, the production design, the details in the Humvees, the fact that some of these guys hand painted them themselves, I'm looking at scenes where they've just got random debris on the road. Like, I mean,
yeah,
it's well beyond visual effects, but it's the entire set dressing, it's the entire production design, it's everything that really pulls you into. And I'm sure there's people who will say this wrong's that's wrong, this is wrong. But Mark, like you said, it pulls you into this alien world.
Mm-hmm.
At no point was I taken out of this thinking to myself, "Oh, this is being filmed somewhere else." Everything seemed genuine to me.
Yeah, I was not getting Ewan McGregor running into a green box.
Correct. They did a good job.
Yes. No janky CGI here. What else, Jesse? What else is on your mind in terms of what works for you in the show?
Oh, I've got a list. I mean, I've got a list of a few. I did like sometimes trying to decipher some of the military jargon, and especially some of like the weird customs that happened.
Sorry, I will be saying for the next few weeks, unfuck yourself because of the show.
I still use Oscar Mike on a regular basis.
Do
Oscar Mike.
I was driving around with my girlfriend the other day, and I told her, "Okay, take the exit 40 Alpha," and she looks at me like, "What are you in the fucking military?"
So other side of things,
Mm-hmm.
Another part of my personal biography, I was in the Royal Canadian Air Cadets for 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and part of that time I learned proper aviation phonetics. So
Mm-hmm.
Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, so on and so forth. To this day, I still use perfect phonetic whenever I'm trying to, like, if I have to call somebody or like give some random serial number,
Mm-hmm.
then I will jump in with that. And for nines, I will use Niner.
Niner? Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
Nice.
yeah.
How
So
many
I
times has
actually
your wife
got a
wanted to
little
punch-
education on proper radio procedure and things like that. So I'm nowhere near the level of professional military, but I think just enough to be dangerous is probably the best way to say it.
When you do that around the house, how often does your wife have to resist the urge to punch you right in the dick?
She's pretty used to it at this point.
Okay.
She has picked up some of the idioms I use and use them at work.
Mm-hmm.
There's one, they don't use it in this show, but there's an idiom called, when you're trying to get something done and be efficient and coordinated, the phrase that is used is shoot, move, and communicate.
Right.
She's actually used that at work. To which she used that to somebody else who I think was in the American military, and like, how the hell do you know that phrase?
All right, Jesse, we jumped all over you there. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. So we talked a lot about intelligence in the military. And one of the things that I noticed here was it seemed like if you were an intelligent person and you were trying to make the intelligent decision, of course you had to follow orders. And what we see here a lot, at least what I got from Lieutenant Fick?
Fick, yeah.
Who was having, he was one of the smartest people in this show, in my opinion. He was one of the smartest ones who would be like, okay, why are we doing this again? Why are you calling in, this? Why are you calling in this airstrike that's going to be within 200 meters of us? Why are you doing this? And at one point, he even decides that he's not going to send his men into the streets in order to like advance in some way because he's concerned about his men. But what I noticed is, if you're a smart man, if you got a stupid person above you, your decisions are never going to matter. You're going to suffer for making the right decision.
I was gonna say,
And-
that's what's working. That's the modern workplace, though, is that you have people in levels of management and command that are making decisions, and then you have us lay people going, "Ugh,
Yeah.
or how many assholes we got on this ship?" Yo,
And
I knew it. I'm surrounded by assholes.
you just feel for Lieutenant Fick and
Mhm.
him trying to make these decisions. But yeah, you know what, that's the interesting dichotomy of the military. The military just they want people that have no conscience and will just do their bidding, but you have to have the smart people in the right places in order to make this stuff work. But unfortunately, those smart people are going to start to realize that, what the hell are we doing here? Why are we fighting this war? What is the point? And that is one thing that, I mean, as we get closer to the end of the episodes, that Fick and Iceman are just sitting there looking at what have they done? What is the goal? Have we achieved anything? I mean, they soon become like, instead of being a strike team, or these guys are helping. Is that the main job? It didn't seem like that was the main job of like helping fix what was destroyed, because they're going.
Yeah, and I mean that
realistically, I think we learned from Nam and we learned from Korea that if the phrase "hearts and minds" was bandied about during this time. We have to win the hearts and minds of people. And look, Jesse, you're only as good as your CI. You don't have the people on the ground helping you. You can only, you only kill so many people. And at some point, you have to ask yourself what it is. We were never going to make Iraq the 51st state.
Mm-hmm.
It was always going to be knock out the leadership, rebuild the bridges and the roads, put a government in place, walk the fuck away. It was never, for a lot of the cynicism, and there are people going, "Oh, they just went over there to get that oil," and all the other arguments I heard at the time, and sometimes here to this day. We were never going to be there to stay. At which point, then you have to ask yourself, how exactly are we supposed to fight this war when the object of war is to destroy the lines of communication, destroy the lines of distribution, conquer the people, break their backs, and then once you've turned this entire country to dust, then you rebuild. But you rebuild in your image. That's how Rome worked. Until it fell and we had the Dark Ages. But I digress. The age of modern warfare was never fully committing to conquering your enemy. And soldiers feel that shit because you're taught to conquer the enemy, and then you go there and you're like, well, that's not really what we're here for, though.
Right.
And then so now you're back to hearts and minds. Like, we have to win the people over so they'll fight for themselves, and we're just here to help them. And as a soldier who's taught, as you're saying, as a soldier who's taught to kill without conscience, you're like feeling like the messages, Andrew, are a little mixed here.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things here, and I'm definitely gonna pick on a couple, and maybe I'll start with that last line. I think one of the things that I do enjoy about this show, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit more, is that I think, the phrase "kill without a conscience," I think is probably a little overused when it comes to the military, because I think these guys have a lot of conversations around what's the best way to stop this without killing somebody we don't need to.
Sure.
Like Colbert really takes it, and it really affects them when, they see civilians hit, and it's like, no, we're supposed to be precise. We're supposed to be scalpels.
Right.
We're better than.
Yeah. We're not dropping Moabs everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think part of what this gets into is a little bit of kind of that high level context. So here's some quick analysis from me. I am not intimately familiar with all the details, but
and now military expert Andrew Graham.
Quick, change his name down there.
No, don't do that. Okay, so I think bottom line, kind of here's what ended up happening with Iraq. So governments have plans to do everything, and I mean absolutely everything. I think until the 1980s, there was a plan for the United States to invade Canada.
Sure.
But this included the fact that within the United States government, there were plans to do things like invade Iraq. And all the different departments get things that they're good at. The State Department put up a whole plan of when we invaded Iraq, here's how we're going to deal with the police, here's how we're going to deal with power, infrastructure, food, governance, things like that. And when they started getting ready for this, and this is pretty well known at this point, basically the Defense Department said, throw that shit out of there. We're going to do it our way. And this is a failing of both probably the initial invasion of Afghanistan and the initial invasion of Iraq, is that they went in there with
Wolfowitz was the guy I couldn't remember earlier, but
Rumsfeld
and Wolfowitz. And
Wolfowitz, yes.
Yeah, Wolfowitz. You got to remember, I remember reading a lot of this at the time. It was in the Woodward book. It was in a bunch of other books. They were real excited about the military in the year of our Lord, 2002, 2003.
Yep.
They were like super excited about it. And boy, did they want to invade somebody just to show they could and how fast they could do it.
Exactly. And that was the problem is, and with a light footprint. So
right.
like, the size of the forces in both of these were relatively small relative to what they achieved. Like, I mean, I think it was maybe 250,000 guys took over a country of 30 million people in 3 weeks.
Right.
But the problem is when you're invade on that kind of light footprint, you've got all those spearhead soldiers, and that's great, but you don't necessarily have then the troops to come behind and do stuff like blow up arms stockpiles, start distributing civilian aid, start distributing that. And because they didn't have any plans for how they were going to govern, I mean, this one of the things that, if you pay attention, you start to see the seeds of what would end up being the insurgency, and then end up in the insurgency that turns into ISIS.
There's essentially it was, we're going to invade this country, we're not going to hold it, and then we're going to have an election. Okay, those are steps 1, 7, and 20.
Yeah.
Just said.
And the other thing I'll add on to here, if you guys ever get a chance, go read the what is it, Enchanted Life in the Emerald City, which it's kind of made into a movie called Green Zone, but has nothing to do with it. And they were talking about what was going on in the main kind of American Green Zone, and how policies were being done. And the thing was that Iraq at the time was what you would call like a true socialist government. The government owned everything. Every private industry, everything was owned by the Iraqi government. They basically powered the entire economy, and were already failing at it. And when the Americans came in, they decided to get a whole bunch of young bucks whose parents had put in a lot of money to George Bush's campaigns, and had all these great ideas where it's like, we're going to turn this country into a free market capitalist system in 6 months. And it's like, you cannot do that, undo 40 years of rule in that way.
Not to mention, you have Saudi Arabia, this religious dictate on our left, and then you have Iran, who some might say we didn't get along with, on the right. We have Kuwait, and we have Dubai to the south, and like Syria, I think, if I've got my geography right, to the north.
Yeah, kind of north.
Yeah. No good neighbors.
Not
a single one.
Kind of gets weird, and I mean, I'm gonna try and keep this as short as I can. I promise, guys. We're probably losing listeners right now, but it's like weird when you get into the relationships, because, like, on some level, since this has happened, Iraq's kind of turned into a tug of war and a cold war between the Saudis and the Iranians, who don't like each other very much.
Yeah, essentially, Iraq turned into Vietnam, essentially.
In some ways, yeah. And I mean, like, when you look at Syria's government is a Ba'athist government.
Right.
Because what ended up happening was, like, in the 1950s, when all these countries started to have their colonial rulers, like Britain and France and whomever, leave, they all went for these kind of relatively socialist, nominally sectarian governments. And so, like, Iraq got that kind of government, Syria got that kind of government, a few others did, and it's kind of, it's very complex, and I don't think anyone quite appreciated the complexity of what they were getting into.
See, if we had just let the British keep their empire, none of this would have ever happened.
No comment.
All right, we got to get back to talking about the show. Was there anything else related to, because I'm going to close out the discussion with talking about the music. So was there anything real quick, Andrew, on your wish list of things to talk about?
And I mean, I think that's kind of, that almost kind of, gets into what I was talking about. Is I was rewatching this show the way that we tend to, and we try and look for the thesis in it.
Yeah.
And the interesting part is that I couldn't find one single solid thesis, but man, does it cover a lot of ground. Because again, we talk about, you talk about, you look at Fick and you look at Encino Man and you look at Captain America and you look at Fernando, and there's this entire conversation about what the nature and theory of leadership is.
All right.
How do these guys, going back to Brandon Brothers, and it's like Winters and Sobel, and how do these guys all manage their guys? You're talking about trauma ensemble, the relationship between the soldiers, nature of masculinity. Like, there's a lot of stuff you can unpack there. I mean, did you guys get a chance to listen to the kind of the after credits on the second to last episode?
No, I didn't.
No.
Okay, go back and do that, because what is it's a conversation between Scribe and the reporter and a bunch of the other Marines, and he's like, okay, what the fuck am I supposed to make of all this shit you guys are constantly talking? Because like, these guys are brutal to each other all the time, and there's
Robert and
everything.
Robert and I got into this whole conversation about masculinity and the way men talk to each other. I mean, look, let's just give a small anecdotal example of this. Me and Chris Bailey. I love that guy to death.
Chris Bailey.
The very same. I love him to death. How much shit do we give each other in the group chat?
Oh, lots.
And like, we don't hold, like, how many times have I told him to go fuck himself?
Yeah.
Or referred to him as fuckface? And he purposely stirs up shit in the chat, and he pinches my nipples, and I'm like, and I'm right there with him. Like, Robert Winfrey and I have discussed the fact that, the whole like phrase locker room chat got really sullied when Trump sort of threw it out there as a cover for his misogyny.
I've never even been in a locker room where you talk like that.
But there is a level of when men talk to men, or boys talk to boys. We're not girls. We give each other shit. We're constantly jostling and pinching at each other, and and it's always, and it's like bucking rams. We're just bashing our heads together just because it's fun to do that.
And that's what they that's what they get into, where it's like, it's testing each other, it's pushing each other, it's making sure, are you hard enough to do this? Like, you probe to find the weakness, and then you seal that weakness up, and things along that line. On that topic, I am going to say I'm really looking forward to whenever they do Eternals 2.
Poke, twins. But I'll tell you, because of sort of the hyper vigilance and sort of assault on traditional masculinity that goes on in the national conversation currently, and certainly on Twitter, there's not a lot of tolerance for this sort of thing. And it's like, you watch a show like, so I remember talking to Sean last year about the movie Christine, and I was like, Jesus Christ, it's been so long since I've heard anyone in the movie call anyone else a fag, as a jibe at their lack of masculinity. I kind of said to him at the time, I was like, I miss when you could just write that way. I miss the ability to write the way people talk, and not the way people wished people talked, which is what you get a lot of now. Is you can't say that, a lot of that Orwellian thought and language police that goes on, because, and in some cases rightly so, if I'm being fair, we would like to evolve as a culture, and we don't want to see people talking negatively to each other, but by the same token, we're still doing it, and some of us are clinging to it rather tightly. And then so you go to related to Generation Kill, you have these guys that are very openly slurring each other and and talking shit, and it's all in the service of, we must now run into hailings of bullet fire. We must run into the enemy head first. Maybe being called a fag is not the worst thing ever. Yeah.
And, it's kind of funny. There's a scene, we haven't had a chance to talk about it because of circumstances, but there's actually a funny scene that kind of turns that on its head a little bit with in The Outpost.
Yeah.
Where there's some, and again, this is that difference between, again, when we're talking about kind of cultures within cultures. So, guys who are in a really elite unit versus the guys who are just kind of thrown together. And it's like, guys, we're a band of brothers. And it's like, it is such just the worst moto shit that you have ever heard. And then he's like, well, this guy can call me a whiskey tango, and I can call him an N-bomb. And he's like, what the fuck did you just say to me?
Right.
And I think it was a higher rank. So it's like, It's like he looked he was about to fuck him up, and I would not blame him for that.
Yeah, I look at it as like, them picking on each other is a release, plus it's a way of establishing camaraderie and figuring out who is the weakest of the bunch. It all boils. I mean, there's a couple moments in this series where, at the end, and I know we're going to talk about the music here in a second, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about the end, but I think the ending scene definitely is very poignant. And maybe we'll save that till after we talk about the music, but I do want to talk about the football game. That's another example of what you guys are talking about, where they found out that things are, they've pretty much won. But they all go out for a football game and things just boil over.
Yep.
And I mean, what do you think is happening there? I want to get your opinion.
Oh,
Andrew,
I know
you got an idea?
No, I know what's happening. Those guys have had to be zipped up and in control and precise for 3 solid weeks. And finally, so it used to be you'd go into the military, you would do your job, and for release, you'd get, your R&R, you would go fuck the locals. You'd go you'd get drunk.
Fuck the locals.
You just go fuck the locals. In all seriousness, you'd take your money and you'd go buy, prostitutes and drink, and you'd let your hair down, like Andrew Graham does. You let his hair down and you go for a night on the town. And that's how you got your release. There's no liquor in Iraq. There's
actually the U.S. military is dry.
Yeah. There's no liquor. I remember this from Jarhead, actually, where it was just like there will be no alcohol during this entire thing, and so you have Jake Gyllenhaal with a fucking Santa cap on and a sock on his cock, and and fucking poor Jamie Foxx has to walk into the middle like, knock it off. We're all bored here, that sort of thing. Like my favorite scene in Jarhead. Go fig. But like that idea of like, there's no way to release the tension. There's no there's no sex, there's no alcohol, there's no drugs, there's nothing.
There's just more violence.
There's James Ransone, when he's got like the fucking drugs in his hand, and you see, like, you didn't see it on camera, but I could feel the hard on he had, and it's like, put it down, and then zip, and the down, and his penis just falls right off. It's a terrible thing. But my point is, like, psychologically, if you don't have that release after, like, think about this, little Jesse. You go to your relative's house for a holiday, let it be Easter or Christmas or something, and you have to be on your best behavior. This is only a couple of fucking hours, but by the end of it, you want to come home and punch the wall.
Oh yeah.
You're just like, I'm fucking done.
Right.
But that was only after a few hours. Andrew Graham, he takes his children, he puts them in the car, his wife, he drives to the relative's house. After a few hours of that, he comes home, slams his dick right in the door, because like you just can't take it anymore. Like, after a few hours of dealing with Aunt Tilly and Grandma, you're just like, fuck this place.
Hey, I got the home gym right beside me here, so there you go.
Exactly.
Just off screen.
Well, when you don't have that, and everything now it's just the tension erupting out of you. Yep. Yeah, like you people, and all you have is, like you said, Andrew, more violence. Guys are just fucking hitting each other. What else is left there to do? They can't fuck, and they can't drink, and they can't do drugs, and they can't slam their dick in the door. What else you got?
And there's ways there's ways that they can't like resolve some of the tensions and stuff like that. And I mean, I'm less sure on I have to go back and read the book to see if there was anything on it, but I'm less sure on what happened between Person and Rudy, because on the flip, like that it goes for a second, and it's Person having a bit of a meltdown there after, I think he's maybe a little bit in withdrawal for no longer being on the red fuel. But on the flip side, like, yeah, him and Rudy have a fight, but afterwards, I think Rudy's actually kind of hurt over the whole thing, because if you see him grabbed and walking away, you can actually hear Rudy calling after him. Right. Like, bro, what happened? And stuff like that. Yeah. And by the way, you guys know that's the actual Rudy Reyes, right?
I know.
Oh, no. No, that is actually him.
No kidding.
So,
the thing between, maybe I'll jump in, but it's like the thing between Captain Patterson and Encino Man was probably a little more pointed, especially after probably Patterson found out about Encino Man giving that order to go do something stupid, like, let those guys sweep a fucking minefield at night.
Jeez, criminy.
And that one I get, because you get a little bit of Captain Patterson played by Michael Kelly. I remember him quite a bit from House of Cards with He Who Shall Not Be Named. But I mean, like he comes again. He's the one who comes off. It's like, wow, that is the kind of officer you'd want to serve under, because it's like he's smart, he's reasonable, he's professional, he's prepared. That's the kind of guy you want to have be your CO.
Right.
All right. Just because we're a little over an hour here, the music in this thing is probably like its own character.
Oh yeah.
And I was doing some research on this because, first of all, my wife is the one that turned me on to Wheatus's Teenage Dirtbag. Big hit around our house. I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby. Listen to source material, baby.
Those are good words. Great lyrics.
Yes. So
sometimes I feel I need to get away. I want to get away. Oh, we got some lag going here, Mark. We're at a sync.
So almost the entire soundtrack is done a cappella in the fucking tanks.
Yep.
Or in the Humvees or whatever. And
there's no country and western in this Humvee.
That is right.
Well, and there's a great bit about that where he starts, I think, singing like "On the Road Again" or something like that. It was like that is not a.
Don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys.
Right, because it's a cowboy song, not a country.
It's a cowboy song.
Right. I got to talk about the Teenage Dirtbag thing for a second because I recorded that. I just like filmed my television and I put it on TikTok, and because I'm dying laughing at this because it was so perfect the way that it was done. It's like anatomy of a scene, right? He's just like, as we all would do, where you're just kind of in the car, you're just like, oh, the teenage dirtbag. Listen to Iron Maiden, baby, and then Jesse comes in, and it's like, and then suddenly you have a full chorus, full-bodied chorus that you could hear outside of the Humvee, and it's and the camera's panning. Like, what cinematography in this? The camera's panning around and everything, and not since the Mandy car chase and Too Old to Die Young have I appreciated the music in a scene and how it set the tone for everything. It's marvelous.
And okay, so I had to ask, because contemporary to this, one of my friends was a member of a Armored Reconnaissance Regiment in the Canadian Armed Forces, and I had to ask him, so how accurate is the singing? And he's like, yeah, it's accurate. Because I think that's one of the things that the series also gets, is that war on some extent is fucking boring.
Yeah.
It's hours of undying boredom followed by moments of sheer terror.
Right.
It's a lot of if you think about all the great war movies that we're going to talk about next Thursday on the Whiskey Rebellion, how much of those scenes is guys just sitting around waiting to do something?
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like there's another podcast I listened to called Cleared Hot with Andy Stump, and he was a Navy SEAL, and he said war movies would be boring if they ever actually showed what it was. If I can count the number of hours I spent working on a PowerPoint slide trying to get the arrow to face in the right direction, you would think I'm crazy.
Accurate.
And this was a guy who was a SEAL.
What'd you think of all the singing, Jesse?
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. That was one of the things I first mentioned in our chat. It was like they saved so much money on this soundtrack by having the actors sing the songs, which is great.
Look at God, listen to some of these fucking songs here. Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne, Loving You. Loving You is easy cause Andrew Graham is beautiful. La 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 la.
I didn't expect Andrew Graham to start singing with you tonight. I
knew that was gonna happen. I absolutely knew that was gonna happen.
Fuck it, Mark's gonna finally break me, and I'm gonna start singing on this podcast tonight.
There was Boys in the Hood, because Jesse knows this one. Woke up late at about noon.
That's a good one.
Be in Compton soon. Gotta get drunk before the day begins. Come on,
I'd
Jesse.
like to point out right now, Amazon Music, you're missing a hell of a plug if you're still sponsoring.
Oh yeah,
talk to our ad sales guy. Anyway, we got Jesse. My favorite, because I'm gonna go to St. Louis and try to find him. But until then, Nellie's gonna tell you that it's getting hot in her.
Yes.
Just take off all your clothes. I am getting.
Is there a J-Lo song on there?
There should have been, right?
Dude, J-Lo was dead.
Oh, that's right. Jalen's dead.
Jalen's
Forgot.
It was a good day. The aforementioned Tainted Love. Oh my God. The other really fun sing along in this is What Are We Fighting For? That's so good. By Country Joe and the Fish. The aforementioned Teenage Dirtbag. On the Road Again. My Cherie Amour. Gangsta. Jesse knows that one. Let Me Ride. Fuck the Police. Can I Kick It? Jesse, can I kick
yeah.
it?
Now see, yes, you can. That was
yeah.
I think episode 6 or 7 there when I started singing that one. It was a good one.
So Fresh and So Clean. Come Sail Away. That was another good sing along.
Oh yeah.
And then the only one not sung out loud by the soldiers is When the Man Comes Around.
Right.
All right. Last licks, and then we're gonna get out of here. But before we do, we have to do our. This is becoming a thing now, Jesse. Every episode that we do from the corner to the deuce, we have to do quotes.
Boy.
I already put it. I put it in our little group chat thing. So pull it up.
I've got it. I'm sitting here, and it's massive. So you better figure out what the hell you want to, which ones you want to do here.
Every single one of them.
This is a ridiculously quotable show.
Done, Slim Charles. All right, so Jesse,
lot.
last licks, got any?
I want to get your guys' opinion here of the final scene. As they're sitting around watching this documentary, and you see the mood of these guys being so jubilant until everybody just kind of walks away, and it's very somber. But Andrew, let me hear what you thought of that final scene as we end the show.
That one was interesting. I mean, I think it's definitely kind of that, that farewell to everybody. I mean, it's even kind of funny that, like, Brad, the guy you spend the most time with, is the one who walks away first. And I guess I'm not entirely sure what that scene was trying to tell us.
It was I think it's a very David Simon End of the Wire kind of a thing.
Okay.
At the end of season 5 of The Wire, they made a point of saying the case may be over, but life goes on.
Yeah.
The invasion may be over, but everyone's got to go back to their lives. Like this, life goes on after it's all said and done. That was my takeaway.
Yep. And I mean, I think it was kind of interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if looking at that, if they were interspersing because I'm assuming at this point that camera actually came along with the actual first recon, and some of that might actually be of actual first recon Marines during the invasion.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of hard to say because it's almost just this little last set of character moments on everyone walking off, and then Tremblay being the the last one and grabbing his saw and walking away, and it's, I mean, maybe it's just a stylistic flourish I'm not used to, but I just wasn't quite. And it's awesome because of the song, because Johnny, late stage Johnny Cash, but I just wasn't quite sure what it was saying.
Okay,
I'm gonna rest back on, if you watch enough David Simon, you sort of see this sort of thing of. But I think it's also related to the idea of the soldier mentality of we are here to do a job. The job may be invading, but we are not an invading force. We are professional soldiers tasked with a glorious burden, as it were. And now it's over. We're done. It's time to go home. We have wives to go back to, girlfriends, boyfriends, children, jobs, society. We have a whole life ahead of us to continue to live. And we have to do so now with the glorious burden of what we've accomplished here. And I think that's that. You talked about through lines, Andrew, and I think one of the things that David Simon wanted to tell with this story was that nothing is as black and white. Nothing is particularly uncomplicated about this. It's all complicated.
Okay.
The invasion itself was complicated. It had many sides to examine. It was very easy for people at the time to be hypercritical of Bush and the Iraq War. War is bad, duh. But
war is chaos.
But even
no matter how much you try and order it, there's always a level of chaos and a level of unintended suffering that you get out of it.
But even the intel at the time, like, it's not like they lied entirely about their belief that there were weapons of mass destruction there. They believed it was there up until the point that and you can make the argument that they were looking for any excuse to invade Iraq, any at all. And I said that at the top of the podcast. Don Rumsfeld was like, there's no good targets in Afghanistan. There's great ones in Iraq. And we Saddam Hussein has no use to us anymore. Let's go get him before he does something that we're all going to regret. Which in and of itself, there's arguments for and against where Don Rumsfeld was coming from. But we're so quick to want to either put people on a pedestal as our heroes or tear them down as the devils. And I think what David Simon says is it's probably somewhere in the middle. And maybe the middle needs some greater examination, because I think too often in the national conversation, it's Islanders, Rangers, it's one side, other side, and we're all just attacking each other. And I say this all the time throughout the many podcasts that we've done on this network over the years, that one of the most frustrating things about the conversation, the public conversation, the national conversation, is this idea of there has to be a right and there has to be a wrong, and there can't just be an exchange of ideas. And I think David Simon, if you're looking for a thread from Homicide to Generation Kill all the way to We Own This City, is that there's a lot of gray to examine and a lot to talk about if we would only be patient with each other and do that, instead of being like you're a man and wife in a marriage and one of you has to be right and one of you has to be wrong and there's no discussion in the middle. Sorry, I'm projecting again. All right. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that. I'll let you guys kind of bat that around for a second.
I mean,
go ahead, Jesse.
No, go ahead, sir.
I was going to say that was probably a question I wanted to ask you guys, and Mark, I think you just answered it, is knowing what I know of kind of the David Simon canon and what he generally deals with. This is definitely outside of that. So I was kind of interested to see kind of how you guys thought this fit within that canon.
I think I just answered that, but Jesse, what do you think?
No, exactly. That's what. Yeah.
I mean, it'd be tough to say. I mean, my goodness, I feel like as we get to the end of this series, I'm reminded of McNulty in the courtroom at the end of season 1 of The Wire, which
the
is
fuck did I do?
As they're watching the film and they're so jubilant at the beginning, it's them realizing like, well, shit, what did we do? What the fuck did we do here? And what's to come? But fitting that in with I could see that being a definite David Simon staple. If that was
David Simon looks at a situation or a book or something and goes, okay, the question asked about this particular topic is, what the fuck did we do? And this show will answer that question for us. That's the truth. That's the through line.
There are plenty of people throughout this whole series that was asking, what the fuck are we doing? Where the fuck is this? What the fuck is going on? Because there's so much confusion.
Right.
And then at the end of things, you think that you know what you're doing, and when in fact you realize you don't. So yeah, that's
all right, Jesse.
There you go.
It's time. Yeah, let's play. Are you gonna play with us?
Oh boy,
we're gonna play quotes. So Jesse, you start it. I go, and then if there's a third part, Andrew, hit it.
We are on IMDb, ladies and gentlemen, and we are reading Generation Kill quotes. Corporal Gabe Garza says, "Hey, there's kids holding hands."
Oh, cute. Don't shoot him, Garza.
Corporal Josh Ray Person. Lieutenant, have you got any word?
I only get what's passed on to me from Godfather, and the only word is he gets from the BBC. If we're lucky, Saddam will back down. Let the inspectors in and we can go home. The important thing is we're doing our jobs by being here. All of you should be proud.
Sir, that's not the word I was asking about. We wanted to know if you knew anything about J-Lo being killed.
Ray, the battalion commander offered no sit rep as to J-Lo's status.
Sergeant Brad Iceman Colbert. Thank you. Vote Republican.
That was great. Oh man. Corporal Josh Ray Person. Look, Brad, I'm a man just like you, only I don't look like a oh man.
You want me to do this one?
Yes, please do this one, Mark.
Got
you have
it.
no problem doing this.
I
one,
have
apparently.
no problem. Look, Brad, I'm a man just like you, only I don't look like a faggot and speak all educated.
Oh my
Thank you for letting me read that one. That makes me so happy.
Yes.
All right. I got this one.
Yep.
Colbert. Gentlemen, we just seized an airfield. That was pretty fucking ninja.
Yeah.
Keep going, Andrew.
All right. Colbert again, once more into that great good night. Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war.
Great quote. The boy, oh boy, am I getting into something here? Okay, Corporal Jeffrey Dirty Earl Carasales. To think I believed the judge when he told me the Marine Corps was a superior alternative to jail. I should have shut up and just done my time.
All right. It looks like we finally have a 3-part play here. Who wants to take which side?
I'll describe.
I'll take Person.
Okay. All right. Speaking of which, one of you guys still has my girlfriend's picture.
Dude, I hate to tell you this, but your girlfriend's kind of a whore.
What?
Yeah, last time I saw her, she was doing all of H&S Company.
She doesn't deserve you, man.
That poor guy's picture of his girlfriend.
I'm doing
All right, I gotta take. Can I take this one?
Oh yeah.
Okay. When my band opened up, this is Person. When my band opened up for Limp Bizkit in Kansas City, we fucking sucked. But then again, so did they. The only difference is they became famous and I became a Marine.
All right, I'm doing this next one. This is Iceman Colbert, the sexy Alexander Skarsgård. The point, Lance Corporal. We're supposed to be a recon unit of pure warrior spirit. We're out here, 40 clicks in enemy lines, and this man of God here, he's a fucking pog. In fact, he's Pogue. He's an officer Pogue. That's one more layer of bureaucracy and unnecessary logistics, one more asshole we need to supply MREs and baby wipes for. And worst of all, Jesse Starcher, the motherfucker doesn't even carry a weapon. When push comes to shove, even Rolling Stone picks up a gun. But this fucking shill of God, he can't cover a sector. He'll never hump an ammo or claymores. This is fucking war. And we're here as warriors. So on top of everything else that's expected of us to do, we really need to drag him along and indulge his make-believe bullshit.
Oh, Corporal Ray Person. Oh, no. Now, not only do we have to worry about all the charms you've eaten, which, by the way, we need to stop after this. Now, not only do we have to worry about all the charms you've eaten, but now Brad's just pissed off God. All right, two things. Two things. I need to know what a Pogue stands for, because that's one I didn't know about.
Person other than Grunt.
Okay, all right. And then, do you know the history of charms?
So they actually covered that in the booklet. So, one thing is that all militaries have their own version of a ration, individual meal packs, or the U.S. has MREs, meals ready to eat. I guess in the Marine Corps, they have these little candies called charms, which, because of their name and the inference that they're lucky, are therefore unlucky. So anyone will automatically throw them the fuck out of their vehicle as soon as they see them. So like they even mentioned at some point, oh God, look, it's a charm dump, where everyone has literally just dumped all their charms to keep it away from them.
All right. So
then at the end of the show, when he's done it, it's like, okay, we're out of the shit. We can have our charms now.
Yes, he was eating the charms up.
So these next three, Jesse, then me, then Andrew. Hit it.
All right.
Hit it, Darren.
Hit it, Darren. Sergeant Major John Sixta. Marines around this world would gives they left nuts to be where you are.
I picked that one specifically.
I forgot who that character was until I started reading it.
All right, hit it, Andrew. Oh no, sorry. This one's me.
Yep.
This is Corporal Josh Ray Person. You know, it doesn't make you gay if you think Rudy's hot. We all think he's hot.
And Person again. God damn it, Baptista. How the fuck would you like it if I joined the Brazilian Marines and only spoke English?
Okay, this is a two-part play. Go ahead, hit it, Jesse.
All right. Captain Craig Encino Man. We'll just put it that way. Encino Man. Doc.
I'm all squared away, sir.
Doc, I know the guys look up to you. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
You're asking me to be frank, sir?
Yes.
You're incompetent, sir.
I'm doing my best. Encino Man. Gosh, what an idiot. I don't know who was worse. I mean, Encino Man was up there, but Captain America was just off the chain idiocy sometimes.
All right, so I'm going to be Pearson and you be Iceman, Andrew.
Got it.
This is really interesting, Brad. You know, Iraqis don't really seem good at fighting, but they never really completely surrender either.
Put down that fucking milkshake and dig a fucking hole.
Why? So I can be more like teacher's pet?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You should be more like Trombley.
More like Trombley. More like Trombley? Oh, do it. Sing it to me, Jesse. Say it.
Oh boy. Oh, now that in context, that's horrible.
That
This was
one of
like the
worst
most
lines in this entire
uncomfortable.
show.
Drop a
It
drip,
really
Jesse.
seriously is.
Don't you drop a drip. Just say it to Daddy. Let's go.
Sergeant Larry Sean Pappy Patrick. Damn, I'd eat a mile of her shit just to see where it came from.
That's gonna be my ringtone. All right, go ahead, Andrew.
Hey, Walt, can you get a person again? Hey, Walt, can you keep it down? I'm having trouble hearing the artillery.
Sergeant Antonio Espera. It makes my heart heavy to see the white race stoop as low as James's mother has. At least if she was Mexican, she'd be ashamed of herself.
Navy, help me out here. HM2, Robert Timothy Doc Bryan. So this is Doc. Iraqi's first contact with America. We fuck them.
All right, keep going, Andrew.
Ugh, perfect shitting opportunity. Fuck it, I'm going for it.
Yeah, him having Iceman having like the asked of shit at just the perfect time.
Pearson, a nut busting Haji is a happy Haji.
Can I take this one?
Let me see what we got here.
Oh, can I get this one?
I'll
Yes.
go for it.
Interrogative. Did you find any non-specific destroyed Iraqi armor?
All right, Bravo 3's commander. Should I shoot him?
Don't waste your bullet.
Peace sucks a hairy asshole, Freddy. War is the motherfucking answer.
Gosh, all I want is just like his lines. Like I want all of them in a book so I can read them.
It's like a daily affirmation.
Yes, please put it on a calendar, Mindy.
Okay, we have all three. Who wants to be Iceman? Who wants to be Person? And who
You're
wants to be...
Iceman. You're always
I'll be Scribe.
Iceman.
Careful
Okay,
with that
I'm
red
Person.
fuel.
Fuck, man. I'm on 30 hours no sleep. Beat the record I made in high school when I was on the debate team.
Wait a minute. You were on the debate team?
What's the channel for the 119s?
64 and Tad 7. Oh, yeah, I was really fucking good, but all the other guys on the team thought I was high all of the time. All right, I'm doing this next one. Sergeant Major John Sixton. You asked to owe Doc $100 fuck yourself.
Put it on a calendar, Mindy.
Yes,
Because that
sir.
shit should be on the backside of it.
Yes, sir. I'm going to be saying that to a lot of people in the group chat. Y'all got X amount of minutes to go on fuck yourselves. I'm Jason Teasley. I'm going to need you to unfuck yourself immediately. All right, give it to me, Iceman.
You know, Poke, guys in the black pajamas did all right in Vietnam, too. You got to respect the pajama.
Hey, buddy, it's 10 in the morning. Don't you think you ought to change out of your pajamas?
Go for it, Iceman.
I'm
wait
running
a
around like
second.
an airplane. I'm not saying anything.
Do it. Actually, I want you to run
you
right now.
gotta do the thing. What did you like? Give him some Rolling Stone drugs or something?
I don't know.
The fuck you do to him?
I just asked him what he would be if he wasn't a Marine.
Oh my god, he wants to be a ballerina. That's my fucking dream. Damn, Brad. What else you got hidden in the Humvee? A fat chick? Arr.
Oh, here's some Lieutenant Fick. Write this as you see it. I'm not here to stop you. That was when he looked at him and said that, I was like, nice. I like Fick. He's probably my favorite character out of this.
Yeah.
Captain
He's
Dave.
done all right. He's I had to look him up. He's apparently like a ambassador at large for cybersecurity or something like that.
Oh, no shit. Okay.
All right, here's Captain America. Shoot that fucking dog.
Darnold, give it a piece of your jerky.
Stay frosty, gents.
Oh, good quote. Good quote.
Semper Gumby, always flexible.
Semper Gumby. Oh, no, wait. You mocking the groom and standing Stafford?
It's important to remember that they'll never take a recon Marine alive.
Hoorah, sir.
We need to make sure the stupidity in this company doesn't roll down too hard on our guys. Someone start this one off.
Rolling Stone?
Perfect. Fuck if they don't give us a dope smoking peace freak writer.
Oh.
Godspeed. God fucking speed you.
Fucking Captain America.
Is he crying? Is he crying?
All right, give it to me, Andrew.
Daddy's back.
Oh, that was after he took a crap, isn't it?
Yep. Hey, he shat tactically. That was good.
Shat tactically
They want our help to clear a minefield.
at night. That's against division orders.
Solid copy. Now you copy this. I am not following that order.
And then you go again, Mark.
They want our help to clear a minefield. You think I'd never read a script before?
Iceman.
Ray,
Go for
can
it.
I have one final moment to enjoy the fruits of civilization?
All right, Sergeant Rodolfo Rudy Reyes. Actually, you do this one. I'll do the last one, Jesse.
Okay. Afternoon, sir. Beautiful day to get our war on.
All right, Navy HM2 Robert Timothy Doc Bryan says, PFC, fucknuts. This is an enemy encampment.
Oh, boy.
Ta-da.
Doc was one of the more interesting characters in this one, just because I don't know how true it is, but medics seem, at least in media, always seem to get a lot more latitude to tell people to fuck off.
Right.
I will say
Right.
that list is missing one of my favorite quotes in this entire show.
Go ahead. Hit me.
It's when they're sitting around and they're watching the mortars come down. And it's like, this country's really pretty. And then Scribe's like, yeah, except for all the mortars. And then Pearson's like, dude, you got to stop taking this shit so seriously. It's just random mortars. It's not like anyone's scoping you with an AK.
All right. That is our review of Generation Kill. I'm super thrilled and happy to have had Andrew Graham on here to give us an edumacation. Andrew, did you enjoy the uncomfortableness that I made? No. Did you enjoy your time here on TV Party, taking our trip from the corner to the deuce?
Dude, I always enjoy this. I am very happy that you guys, allowed me to join in on this journey. I haven't watched a lot of these shows, or haven't watched them in a long time, and I've certainly enjoyed, the quality of discussions you guys have had on it. And as you can tell, I have a lot of passion for this show, so I'm glad I could share it here and, not just, give you guys my Coles notes and Messenger or anything like that. So,
well, we always appreciate having you on. I wish we had a chance to podcast more often, but to paraphrase Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, life gets in the way. So,
no, life finds
Jesse,
a way.
I said paraphrase.
Okay.
Stop correcting me, or I'm not gonna have you on the show anymore. No, I'm just kidding. Jesse, did you have fun? I mean, this is it, man. One season of Generation Kill, and we're moving to New Orleans now.
7 episodes, and I remember just going, "Wow, this is going to be interesting," because we're hitting this and quitting this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I was not having. I didn't have any issues with this series. Had a great time. It was a good war story. So I had a good time, man.
All right, up next, 3 seasons of Treme. Season 1 will be next month, in the month of March of 2023, in the year of our Lord. And that will be, when the fuck did I put this? I've moved everything around all month long for one reason or another.
23rd of February.
Nope, that's the Metal Hammer of... Wait, that's right. I'm in March. February, you're not wrong. It's still January.
Say it again, Mark.
Oh, this will be fun. Our first season of Treme will be after I've had a colonoscopy.
Oh,
I'm going to go on a 60 day to have a finger shoved in my butt.
Oh, boy.
Dude, it's
Violation.
camera, I think. They're going to put optics on you.
That's right. They're going to stick me with an AK. So, yes, February 23rd.
He's been scoped.
For season 1. Season 1 of Treme, Life After Katrina. Looking forward to talking about that with you, Jesse. It's funny. Andrew was just like, Generation Kill, a show about nothing, but really interesting talking about nothing. Wait till you get to 2.5 seasons of fucking Treme, where you're like, I don't understand what the show's about. Like, I know it's about Katrina, but Jesus Christ, does anything happen in this show?
All I know is that Anthony Bourdain was a staff writer on it. So,
yeah, that tracks. All right. In the meantime, in between time, this past week, we re-aired our Amon A. Marth review from 2013. Jesse and I talked for 20 minutes about slots, and then for 40 minutes about No Big Deal. It was great. Still haven't found the fucking dodgeball scene, and now I'm not convinced it was that movie.
I'm questioning, sir. Questioning you.
Yeah, I should absolutely be questioned. Repeatedly. We reviewed Glass Onion, and we had a great talk about wrestlers turned actors. We had from the movies that don't suck and some that do. They did their review of The Pale Blue Eye and what was the other one? Megan or M3gan. And then us tonight, we did Generation Kill. This weekend, we've got Everyone Loves a Bad Guy, The Shield, which I was on back in the day. And then we've got our re-airing of Philip Ensemble and the Illegals, Walkthrough Exits Only. The guys from Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do will have their Tar and Plane review up Monday. Myself, Neil from Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do, plus Chris Bailey and I will be talking the Royal Rumble in the afternoon on Monday, January 30th. We'll be doing our review.
Eternally enjoys that.
Yeah. We'll be reviewing The Pale Blue Eye on Damn You Hollywood Tuesday morning. We'll be re-airing our UFC 241 alternative commentary for Cormier versus Magic 2. And then Andrew Graham will be back with us again a week from tonight, talking on the Whiskey Rebellion. We're going to put we're going to put Andrew Graham and Jeff Sloboda in the same room and let them fight it out. See what happens. But we're also going to talk war movies and what was it was something about manliness.
Modern Fatherhood.
What was it?
Modern Fatherhood?
Yeah. There's an article on the blog Fatherly that I was interested in that talked about like modern fatherhood. And we're all fathers, so I think we even Jeff has progeny. So we'll all have something to weigh in on for that. So that's what's going on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Jesse, why don't you tell us about your real friends that you like more than me?
Here we go. Guilt trip nonstop.
Get in the car. We're going on a guilt trip.
Oh, boy. Well, hey, just one show to look forward to coming up this coming Monday, which will be Unspoken Issues in our discussion. If you went to Pizza Hut back in the 90s, there's a fair chance that you picked yourself up an X-Men comic at one point with your personal pan pizza. And we talk about said comics on that very first episode, and then we'll have a follow-up on, I think, the very next week for our second part of Pizza Hut Comics, which include Real Heroes and the comics that came with the VHS cassette tapes of the X-Men animated series. So anyway, check that out. It's a lot of fun. We had I guarantee you there's at least 3 Pizza Hut commercials in that podcast from the 90s that you can listen to. A lot of fun. Pizza Hut, making it great. Not a sponsor, but I will tell you that I'll leave you with one thing. Run it in a straight line and not in a serpentine fashion.
Yeah.
All right. And lastly, Andrew Graham, where do you like to put on pajamas and roll around with men?
Thanks, Mark. That was dignified.
I'm not wrong.
Well, I mean, we also never mind. I'm not even gonna go. I'm not even gonna try to make a joke because it's not.
He's planning on rolling with you here in a few seconds, Mark.
at Esteem and Havoc Martial Arts here in Calgary. Go check us out on Facebook. Part of the Greater GQ Athletic Association. As Mark mentioned, I will be the proverbial Alexander Hamilton to the Whiskey Rebellion next Thursday. Look forward to seeing you guys again. All
right, folks, that's it. This concludes our review of Generation Kill, From the Corner to the Deuce, the great works of David Simon. We'll be back again next month. For Andrew Graham and Jesse Starcher, I'm a pain in the ass. Be well, be safe, and behave.
And